Welcome to the Oshkosh Area School District Badger Exam Test Administration Training for March 25th, 2015. This training is designed to help test administrators and proctors administer the Badger Exam in a uniform manner across all schools and to ensure that the test will work for all students. Since March 4th in the overview, 2 items have been eliminated from the testing format. The ELA, English Language Arts Section 2 performance task and the classroom activity associated with it. Your school principals have worked on revising your testing schedule to take out those components. Before starting testing, we said in the overview that we want to make sure that students are exposed to the student tutorial and have had a chance to take a crack at the practice test. And though that still is an item that you want to do with your students before starting. Also, when we get started with testing, most of our schools are starting after spring break, we want to create a positive atmosphere. We want to make sure that students are approaching this in a relaxed and positive way, and we want to encourage students to attempt all items and do their best. So who can proctor the Badger exam? Test administrators and proctors are trained staff, which can be our administrators, our professional educators, or paraprofessionals who are employed by the school district. Student teachers can also participate in helping supervise students during the Badger exam, but community members, parent volunteers, etc. are not allowed to be proctors. And if you happen to be a proctor and you have your child in one of the grades, you cannot proctor your own children or your own students. When you logged into TAMs for the first time, and we will review that information, you will be doing your confidentiality agreement form online. There is no need to have a signed paper copy unless you do not have a TAMs account and you are asked to sign off by your school assessment coordinator or your principal. If you happen to be a proctor that will be doing a read aloud protocol with a special education student, you are going to be asked to do the read aloud guidelines and sign the read aloud confidentiality form. Your principal or your school assessment coordinator will have that, or it can also be found on page 36 of your test administration manual. As a test administrator or proctor, you have some responsibilities. First off, you're doing the first one by participating in today's school training on the policy and administration. Your school assessment coordinator will review the information in TAMs prior to testing to make sure student settings are accurate. You need to read and follow the procedures, including the test administration manual, and we will pinpoint pages that you absolutely need to read in this training. You need to actively monitor students during testing, and if you haven't done so already, you need to view the test security PowerPoint. Some schools have already done this at a prior collaboration. Refer to the Proctor checklist in your test administration manual. It gives you some helpful items to do prior to testing, during testing, and after testing, and can be found on pages 27 to 30 of that test administration manual. Prior to testing, you're going to want to organize your classroom or the computer lab before testing. Just like with any of our other standardized testing, you need to remove or cover all instructional materials or posters or bulletin boards that have information such as wall charts, definitions, anchor charts, etc. You need to make sure that there's adequate spacing between students. You need to make sure that you have a testing do not disturb sign on doors of your classroom or your computer lab once testing starts. Of course, having a quiet environment void of distractions. And also to establish some procedures with your school principal for students that finish the test ahead of others. And since there are no time limits and this is not timed, you really do need to have a procedure for doing this because some students may need to exit the room quietly, report to another area, or this would be a good time for students to have a really good book to read while they're waiting for their peers to finish. So make sure you establish that procedure with your school principal. In addition, we need to inform students and have a sign in the testing room to specify that unauthorized electronic devices and cell phones are not allowed in the testing environment. This includes cell phones, cameras, laptops, wireless communication devices, e-readers such as Kindles. We really want to use old-fashioned books when designating activities for students. As a proctor, you can have your cell phone on you, but please have it off and put away. We want to avoid any test security violations. Prior to starting testing, there's a few things that you're going to need to have on hand. First off, you need your test administration manual in hard copy, or you can have it online, for example, on your Chromebook. You need to have that testing do not disturb sign and the unauthorized electronic devices sign. If you are working with a special education student, please work with that special education case manager or your principal to find out if any assistive technology devices may be needed. It's usually rare, but check in case. And most importantly, you're going to need the test tickets, 3 for each student, because students will not be able to log on and access the test without those test tickets. In addition, each student's going to need to have headphones or earbuds. Graph paper is required for students in grades 6 through 8 so that they can access that during the math piece. All students can have scratch paper, and of course keyboards and pointy devices, which are part of all of our electronic devices. And yes, once again, all students need headphones or earbuds because there is a listening portion on the ELA section of the test. In addition, there are quite a few students that have text-to-speech accommodations for math. So once again, headphones and earbuds, and students can use their own, are going to be necessary. Test tickets. For students to get started in either Section 1 Math, Section 2 Math, or Section 1 ELA, they will need a test ticket. And those will be printed off by the assessment office, and your principal will have them on hand and will help you get them organized. A test ticket looks like the following. At the top of the ticket, it will say the test that the ticket is for, the grade, the student's name, the username the student will enter into the secure browser, the password the student will enter into the secure browser, a birth date, which is another identifying factor, but then you need the session ID, which informs what test is going to be pushed out to that student. Each of the tickets come with a ticket roster, which gives some more detailed information and can help you organize the test tickets. An important reminder, just like previously with the WKCE and making sure that each student has their own test booklet, the important part here is ensure that each student has their own Badger exam test ticket. Proctors should be diligently checking tickets as they are passed out to students to make sure the student's name and the student match. Ask students to be sure that they have the correct test ticket in front of them by checking the name on the ticket before they begin testing. This is possibly going to be the #1 area of test security violation, so please, please, please recheck your test tickets. Each student, once again, will need 3 test tickets, 1 tickets corresponding to each test, Section 1 ELA, Section 1 Math, and Section 2 Mathematics, the performance task. If, for example, a student eats their test ticket or seems to lose it or something gets ripped up, not a problem. Test tickets can be reprinted. See your school assessment coordinator or your principal in order to get the test ticket reprinted. There are directions for that, and we can help you with that. Students will use the same test ticket every time they log into a test. For test security purposes, test tickets will become inactive 120 minutes after the student logs out of the test. If the student attempts to log back in more than 120 minutes after logging out, the test ticket will be inactive. Not a problem. As the test administrator or the proctor, you log into TAMs, you select the student or group of students needed to continue testing, and you just click on Continue Testing, and it reactivates the tickets for that particular test. There is a section in there that gives you step-by-step instructions in your test administration manual and in the TAMS test delivery manual, the screenshot portion that shows you how to do this. A question often asked is, may students use test tickets as scratch paper because it'll save paper? No, scratch paper is collected after each testing session and is disposed of or shredded. Tickets aren't. You have to reuse them, so don't use your tickets as scratch paper. A unique portion of the Badger exam is the classroom activity. Classroom activities are designated by school and by grade level, and your principal currently has which classroom activity each grade level or school is going to do. The purpose of the classroom activity is to provide background information so that all students can demonstrate the skills the task intends to assess without having to worry about prior background knowledge. The classroom activity is designed to be an introduction and is not an assessment. Test administrators or proctors should review the classroom activity and the classroom activity guidelines available in your test administration manual prior to doing that. And the classroom activities themselves include directions that are associated with that activity. The classroom activity is not administered online. It's face-to-face. When the performance task is administered, the content from the classroom activity, and the performance task, by the way, is the online computer piece of it, should not be available. So do not put any content from the classroom activity on the board or in handouts. And students can write things down, and they'll probably be asked to write things down during the classroom activity, but they cannot take that into the testing room. That doing so would be considered a test security violation. The classroom activity has to be administered prior to the performance task because we want students to get background knowledge. And it's preferable that they have no more than a 3-day lapse between the activity and when they actually take the Section 2 math portion of the exam. The classroom activity is not secure. However, it should not be supplemented with any other content that the administrator or the proctor may think is helpful because it is standardized. If you do have students with disabilities that may need accommodations, you can absolutely provide those during the classroom activity. In the event a student is absent, which will probably happen, a makeup session must be scheduled because you need to provide the background knowledge for that student. It may be administered in a one-to-one setting, it may be with a group of students who may have missed that day, or, if you like, the classroom activity may be recorded and used for makeups. Work with your principal to decide what works best for your school. So, the Test Operation Management System, logging on to TAMs. As a test administrator or proctor, you should have already received an automated email with your username and a temporary password, and you have already logged on. If you haven't done so already, go back in your email and do this right away. And when you first logged on, you were prompted to read and sign a test confidentiality agreement and change your password. If you have not done this already, or you need to have something sent to you, or you're not sure what's going on, first contact your principal, and then your principal can contact the assessment office to help reset your TAMs login. All right, so we've gotten all the background information. Now we're finally ready to begin the test. Remember that you want to have a hard copy or an online copy of your test administration manual known as the TAMs, and we're going to get started on page 18. The first thing you need to know is that all students are going to use a secure browser to log in to take the Badger exam. And before you get started in the computer lab or with your devices, you need to make sure that all the other applications, YouTube, Google, anything else are all closed. And if you need any assistive tech for a student with disabilities, that needs to be available and ready to go. But all the students are going to sit down in front of their electronic device, and you're going to start reading from the script on page 18 in the test administration manual. This is a standardized script. Once again, you start on page 18, and so that you're comfortable and you understand what's going on, make sure you pre-read the script, but you start on page 18 and you read on through. And once again, have your script on your device or read it from a hard copy. But the script walks you through how to instruct and get your students started. The first thing the script is going to do is it's going to ask the student to go in and launch the secure browser. Then you're going to have words and directions that will walk them through the systems check. We'll walk them through selecting the test, in other words, to take the test. Your secure script will then have students prompt them to enter their login information and pass out their test tickets. You'll be doing a sound check. You'll have the students go to the direction page, and then the first test item will come up. After you do this a couple times, it'll be a little bit easier. But once again, as you do it, make sure you're reading from the script because it is a standardized process. When students log in, on page 20 of your test administration manual is a table of possible error messages that you might see and what you can do about it. So page 20 is your troubleshooting page. Once everybody gets logged in, there's going to be a system check that ensures that the device will function properly. And once again, on page 20, we'll give you some list of errors, and your ITIS or somebody else in your building will be designated to help out that day. Once again, you'll do a sound check where students will have their headphones, make sure they're plugged in and the volume is up on the device, because there is a listening portion with ELA, and we have students that use the text-to-speech accommodation. After they go through that, the directions page will come up, and you as the proctor and the student will go through and review the test rules. We'll go over the pause feature. There will be a reminder to review all questions prior to ending a test session, a review of the navigation features, the back to the next, the review, the end, a review of the universal tools, and the review of answering tools. The first time you do a test session will probably take the longest, but you want to review the directions page each time a student gets started. Once the student is finally through all that, they're ready to go for the first test item. So then what do you do as a proctor? Well, first off, you have to remain in the room throughout the entire test administration, and you need to be actively walking around the room. Ensure that students are not using any prohibited electronic devices, so like texting under the table or perhaps accessing other things. You want to monitor student progress, make sure students are on task, answer questions, like, for example, how do I access the calculator? Like, not content, you're not going to answer questions, but help them navigate, perhaps, and remind students to check their tests for any items marked for review or not attempted prior to taking a long break or logging out for the day. Proctors should not check student answers. To do so would be considered a security violation. You can remind students to check their answers, but you should not as a proctor or test administrator. While taking the test, you do not have to be logged into TAMs, but you can. Unlike the field test or the pilot for the Smarter Balanced, the TAMs system does not allow you to see what individual question is student on, etc., but it does show you what tests have been completed by a student, things that are in progress, or if a student is inactive. The dashboard or the screen looks like the following. But once again, the dashboard or monitoring test status does not tell you where an individual student is on a particular test question, but it will tell you how many sections have been completed, if there are any alerts, and those types of things. This is different from the field test or pilot. You as a test administrator do not have to be logged into TAMs while the students are testing. You will have to log into TAMs to activate test tickets if the session is inactive. When a testing session is coming to an end, students will need to either log out or submit their test. Log out. Students will log out if they are not done and need to come back to complete the section, because remember, the badger exam is not timed and students can have as much time as they need. Submit is used. Student will click submit if they are finished with the testing section. And you can see specific directions on that in your test administration manual. You do not want students to hit submit unless they are sure they are done. Once you hit submit, you cannot go back. Logging out, a student can go back. Makeups. TAMS allows for tracking of students who are tested and not tested, and any student should be given every opportunity to make up this and complete all the exam components. And once again, there is no time or testing requirement, but everything should be completed before the end of the testing window, and we want to test as many students as possible because test participation is part of our school accountability measures. If you come across a special circumstance or test security issue, the first thing you need to do is reach out to your school principal or your school assessment coordinator. From there, they will reach out to the district assessment coordinator, the assessment office. They will contact Julie Mosier or Paige Smoody, and we will help you walk through any process to reset test, invalidate test, to restore test, etc. So once again, if you come across any test security issues or special cases, reach out to your principal and they will help you from there. All scratch paper, graph paper, or printed test items for students receiving like print on demand, which is a very, very, very limited accommodation, must be collected and inventoried at the end of each test session and then immediately shredded. It may not be immediately shredded, but your principal will work with you to provide a process so that we can have them in a secure location so that it can be shredded. The only exception to shredding printed materials and scratch papers when notes are used during Section 2 of your mathematics performance task, because students may be working through a complex problem and may want those notes to continue on the next time that they start Section 2 math. For specific information on this, please refer to page 16 of your test administration manual. But once again, all scratch paper and graph paper is going to be collected and disposed of or shredded after each testing session. The only thing that you will keep each day for sure is your test tickets. Don't forget about the test security manual, which is available, and all of you should have already watched or should be watching the test security training PowerPoint from the DPI. We want to avoid test security violations wherever possible. Now is a great time as we end up here to ask questions, especially of your principal that can answer specific questions about logistics in your school. And if you do have any questions or you're running into issues, you can always contact the assessment office at 2016. Thank you so much for your attention and for proctoring the Badger exam. And don't forget, we appreciate you and everything you do for students each and every day. So thank you,